girls of about 16 in tow stood, rather red in the face, having some sort of altercation with one of the theatre staff. "What do you mean?" he was saying. Gary could hear the stress in his tone. "I'm very sorry, sir," the staff member replied softly, clearly hoping to avoid an embarrassing scene. "But these are not authenticated tickets." "Not authenticated?" His voice became closer to a shout now as anger took over. "I paid an absolute bundle for these. This is a birthday treat for my daughter and her friends." The girls with him looked at one another apprehensively, as they could see the longed-for treat disappearing before their eyes. As Gary watched, another man, dressed in an evening suit and an air of authority, moved close to the noise. Calm control oozed from every pore of his skin. Gary judged him to be from higher up the theatre management chain. "May I help you, sir?" he asked the father of the birthday girl. "Yes, your assistant here says there's something wrong with my tickets and he's refusing to let us in." The manager took the tickets and looked at them. He looked up at the theatre-goer, his face full of regret. "I'm very sorry, sir. My assistant here is perfectly correct. You'll need to contact the agency where you bought them. I'm afraid I'm not able to help." "But I paid for them, with my credit card. There's a record, surely." The mouth of the birthday girl began to wobble, and tears sprang into her eyes. "Dad," she croaked. "Dad, let's just go. We can talk about it outside." "Babes, there must be some mistake. I got them online from a reputable site." He turned back to the attendant, and for a moment it looked as though he might square up to him. But his daughter's obvious distress stopped him, and he started to move the party towards the street. "Scoundrels, ought to be locked up," Gary could hear him muttering, as he shepherded his young charges through the doors. "Oh dear, what a shame. That happens a lot, I think," said a familiar voice in Gary's ear. He jumped and turned to smile into the face of Angela Costello. He leaned forward and kissed her. "You do hear of it quite a bit," he agreed. "Those poor girls aren't going to get their special birthday outing now." "Oh, I don't know," said Madeline, looking out into the street. Gary followed the direction of her eyes. As the man and the girl stood irresolute on the pavement, they were being watched by a ponytailed, T-shirted man in his 20s, with narrow tattoos of hawks swooping down each bare arm. "Ah, yes. Do you reckon that's a tout?" he asked. "Wouldn't be surprised. They can smell disappointed punters from a long way off." Together they watched as the tattooed man sidled towards the group and moved slowly in a semicircle to its other side where their leader stood. The man's daughter was still dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The tout leaned a little closer and said something to catch the man's attention. He gave some instruction to the girls and moved with the tout a short distance away from them. "He didn't waste any time homing in on the situation, did he?" remarked Gary. "They're haggling," said Madeline, watching the transaction take place. "I bet he'll pay up. He won't want to disappoint his daughter and her pals." Madeline nodded her agreement. "It's going to cost him a bomb. Brendan Phelan is a really hot ticket." She slipped an arm round his waist. "Come on, let's go and get our seats." The atmosphere in the auditorium was electric. They could feel the eager anticipation of a good night's entertainment in the air. Seeing himself surrounded by ardent fans, Gary suppressed his reservations about the evening ahead, but remained sceptical as the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the packed auditorium. He sensed the audience waiting expectantly. Silence. Darkness. Then everybody jumped at the resounding crack of a whip. At that exact moment, a set of spotlights illuminated 3 backing singers dressed in black. Seconds later, the same thing happened to bring the band into view. Each visible person on stage stood motionless. The darkness outside the pools of light absolute. Gary sensed the audience holding its collective breath. Again, a loud whip cracked out across the stage, and a gunshot blasted from somewhere above as a bright, single light illuminated Brendan Phelan, standing stage right and solitary, his head bowed. He jerked his face up, spread his arms, smiling, and everybody in the place erupted to a thunderous applause.